That day, I wrapped up work earlier than usual. No texts, no calls, just a simple decision to head home. I figured it'd be nice to surprise my wife. Maybe we'd have dinner together, catch up, just enjoy a quiet evening. But the moment I stepped inside, I heard laughter. Loud, carefree laughter coming from the living room. A pause near the entrance, staying out of sight, wondering what was so funny. And then I heard her voice. Girls, let me introduce you to my personal doormat. Another burst of laughter filled the room. I stood there, frozen listening. He does whatever I ask, pays for everything, never complains no matter how much I spend. Honestly, I bet if I told him to lick the floor, he'd just ask if I needed anything else. The laughter rang out again. My grip tightened around my keys. My first instinct was to walk in, demand an explanation, say something, anything. But I didn't. I just stood there, listening. You think I'm kidding? She continued. Last week, I told him I wanted to go to that fancy spa retreat, the really expensive one. I just mentioned it in passing over dinner. And the next day, bah, he upped it. Didn't even think twice. She sounded amused. Proud. Like this was some kind of game. Like I wasn't even a real person. One of her friends chimed in. You're so lucky. I wish my husband was that easy. Lucky, my wife scoffed. It's not luck. You just have to know how to control them. Make them feel guilty. Act sweet when it's convenient. Throw in some fake tears now and then. Works every time. More laughter. I heard the clink of a glass. Probably someone raising a toast to her brilliance. I leaned against the wall, staring at the floor, her words replaying in my head. I never questioned spending money on her. Never hesitated when she wanted something. I truly believed I was being a good husband, taking care of her. But to her, I was nothing more than a walking wallet. A joke. And the worst part? It wasn't just her. Her friends knew. They laughed about it too. Something shifted inside me. I wasn't going to storm in. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't about to let them see me crack. Instead, I turned around and walked out. Back in my car, I gripped the steering wheel, my thoughts racing. Everything I had given her, every sacrifice, every effort, meant nothing to her. It had all been a joke. Now, I had a decision to make. Not an emotional reaction. Not some heated, impulsive move. A real decision. One that would change everything. One thing was clear. This doormat was done. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I just drove. No destination. Just miles passing beneath me as I let the reality of what I'd heard sink in. I wasn't going to lash out in anger. I wasn't going to stage some dramatic confrontation. That would be pointless. She never respected me. She never had. If I was going to get out of this, I had to be smart. Eventually, I pulled into a cheap motel and got a room for the night. Sitting on the bed, I took out my phone and started writing things down. Not feelings. Those didn't matter anymore. I needed a plan. First, proof. I wasn't going to leave myself vulnerable. Every insult, every manipulation, every way she had used me. I needed to document all of it. I had never recorded our conversations before, but now, every time she made a snide remark, every time she treated me like an accessory instead of a person, I made sure to have it saved. Next, I needed a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but one who knew exactly how to handle divorce and financial protection. I spent hours researching, reading reviews, checking credentials. By Morty, I had an appointment booked. She wouldn't see it coming. Then came the finances. I logged into our accounts, combing through every transaction. It didn't take long to confirm what I already suspected. She had been bleeding money for years. Shopping sprees, luxury vacations, beauty treatments. All of it, right there in black and white. And I had let it happen. Not anymore. I opened a separate account under my name and started moving money. Not all at once. That'd be too obvious. Just small amounts here and there. Slow enough that she wouldn't notice until it was too late. I also started canceling our joint credit cards, one by one. Only the ones tied to my name stayed active. The next time she tried to swipe for something ridiculous, She'd be in for a surprise. The hardest part? Pretending nothing had changed. When I finally walked back into the house, she barely looked up from her phone. "Where were you?" she asked casually. "Work ran late." I lied. She didn't question it. She never did. As long as the money kept flowing, she didn't care where I was. That worked in my favor. For the next few weeks, I played my role perfectly. I still smiled. I still nodded when she made another selfish demand. I still acted like the obedient, spineless husband she thought I was. But behind the scenes, I was tearing down everything she had built. I went through every account I had, changing passwords and securing anything tied to my name. Insurance policies? Updated. Beneficiaries? Adjusted. I made sure her name was stripped from as many assets as I legally could, quietly, without raising any alarms. I even started searching for a new place. Nothing fancy, just something small, just for me. Meanwhile, my lawyer was thorough. We drafted a divorce agreement that left her with exactly what she had brought into the marriage. Nothing. The day I signed those papers, it felt like I could finally breathe again. Now, all I had to do was wait for the perfect moment to drop the bomb. And I already knew when that would be. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. Barely a week after finalizing my plan, my wife had her friends over again. Same crowd, same setting, same fake smiles. I played along like I always did, greeted them, poured drinks, pretended to be the oblivious fool they thought I was. They barely acknowledged me, treating me like furniture. That was fine. Tonight, they were in for a show. Halfway through dinner, she did exactly what I knew she would. "We should do another girls' trip," she mused, lazily swirling her wine glass. "Something bigger this time. Maybe Europe." One of her friends gasped. "Oh my God. Yes. Italy. Greece. Vels," my wife said with a smug little smile. "I mean, why not? I have my personal sponsor right here." Without even glancing my way, she tilted her head in my direction. That was my cue. I reached into my pocket, pulled out the envelope, and placed it on the table in front of her. She frowned. "What's this?" "Open it," I said, leaning back in my chair. Hesitating, she slid a manicured nail under the seal and pulled out the papers. At first, she skimmed the first page, not fully processing what she was looking at. Then she flipped to the second, the third. The laughter died. The room went still. Her friends exchanged confused glances, waiting for her to say something. And then she did. "What the hell is this?" Her voice had lost that sugary sweetness. It was sharp now, edged with something dangerously close to panic. "Divorce papers," I said, calm as ever, taking a sip of my drink. She blinked at me, as if she had misheard. "You're joking." "No," I said, setting my glass down. "I'm done. You don't need a personal sponsor anymore. You're on your own." The mood at the table shifted. Her friends, the same ones who had laughed along with her, started shifting in their seats. Some covered their mouths, hiding their reactions. They weren't laughing this time. Frantically, she flipped through the pages. And then she sighed. The accounts locked away, the assets she had no claim to, the financial support that simply wasn't there. Her face went pale. You can't do this," she stammered. "You can't just." "I can," I ted her ass. "And I already did." Silence. She turned to her friends, desperate for support. But something had changed. They weren't rallying behind her. Some of them, in fact, looked downright entertained. "You know," she whispered, staring at me. "You knew in you." Planned," I corrected her. "The same way you planned every time you manipulated me. The same way you bragged about it to them." I gestured at the table, at the women who had sat there laughing at me for who knows how long. I listened, and I learned. Her mouth opened, then closed. No words came out. One of her friends let out a quiet chuckle. Another took a slow sip of wine, watching the scene unfold like it was a primetime drama. And that was when it finally sank in. She wasn't just losing me. She was losing everything. I pushed my chair back, stood up, and buttoned my jacket. "This doormat is done," I said. Enjoy your dinner. Then I turned and walked out. I didn't look back. Didn't wait for her reaction. Didn't need to see the expression on her face. It didn't matter anymore. I had already moved most of my things into my new place, so there was no reason to return. The locks would be changed soon. The financial ties severed completely. She had no access to my accounts, no credit cards to fall back on, nothing. The next day, the call started. At first, she was livid, screaming, cursing, demanding I come back and fix the mess I had created. Straight to voicemail. Then came the texts, the guilt trips, the threats. She cycled through every trick in her book, every manipulative tactic she had ever used before. But this time, none of them worked. I didn't respond. And then, silence. That was when it hit her. The next time she swiped her credit card, it got declined. When she checked our joint account, it was empty. When she called the bank, they informed her she had no authority over the accounts anymore. Her entire world, the life of comfort she had built on my dime, was crumbling. Desperate, she turned to her friends, expecting sympathy. But instead of support, she found nothing but indifference. The same women who once cheered her on, who encouraged her to use me, weren't there anymore. Some of them, in fact, seemed to be enjoying the downfall. Later, I got screenshots from their group chat, sent by someone who clearly wanted me to know the truth. And the truth was, in the end, she played herself. She really thought she could live off me forever. The idea was almost laughable. She had treated me like garbage, and now she was finally facing the consequences. If she had been smarter, maybe she wouldn't have been so obvious about it. If you're going to milk someone dry, at least don't humiliate them in the process. Her so-called friends? They had never really been on her side. They had just been waiting for the moment she slipped, and now that she had, they were enjoying the show. She tried reaching out to them, one by one. Some ignored her completely. Others fed her weak excuses. I've just been really busy. I think I need to focus on myself right now. I hope things work out for you. Empty words. She was alone. I never saw her again after that night, but I heard plenty. She had to downgrade everything. Her lifestyle, her expectations, even where she lived. She couldn't afford to stay in the house, so she moved out. The lavish vacations, the endless shopping sprees, the designer brands she had once flaunted like trophies, gone. At some point, she even tried reaching out to me again. The messages started off slow. Apologies, excuses, then desperation. I messed up. I see that now. Can we just talk? I don't need money. I just need to understand why you did this. Please answer. I'm struggling. I read them, and I ignored them. She had already made it clear what I was to her. A resource. A tool. Nothing more. And now that resource was gone, ignoring her wasn't difficult. Emotionally, I had checked out long before I handed her those divorce papers. What did surprise me, though, was how quickly I adjusted to my new life. For the first time in years, I wasn't constantly drained. I wasn't under pressure to provide for someone who only saw me as a convenience. I woke up in my new apartment, a small, modern place. Nothing extravagant, but it was mine. No overpriced decorations someone else had picked out. No pointless luxuries cluttering the space. Just peace. The first few days felt strange. Not because I missed her, I didn't. But because I was so used to centering my life around someone else's demands that I had forgotten what it was like to make choices purely for myself. No more checking my bank account in dread, wondering how much she had burned through that week. No more surprise credit card charges for handbags or overpriced spa days. No more constant, unrelenting demands. For the first time in a long time, I was in control. I threw myself into work, not as a distraction, but because I wanted to. Without the weight of my marriage suffocating me, I felt sharper, more focused. I started tackling projects I had put off for years, investing in things that actually mattered. As my finances stabilized, I let myself enjoy the things I had neglected. I went to the gym, consistently. No longer skipping workouts because I was too mentally exhausted from dealing with her nonsense. I reconnected with friends. Real friends. The ones I had lost touch with because my marriage had taken over every corner of my life. One of them, a guy I'd known since college, laughed when I told him about the divorce. I always wondered why you put up with her, he said. It was like watching someone keep pouring water into a glass with a hole in the bottom. That stuck with me. Because he was right. I had spent years trying to fill a void that could never be satisfied. So, I took a trip. Nothing big, just a weekend at a quiet cabin by the lake. No schedules, no obligations, just time to breathe. It was something I had always wanted to do, but never did, because she never would have approved of such a simple, inexpensive getaway. Now, I didn't need approval from anyone. Every once in a while, I'd hear updates about her. She had moved in with a relative, struggling to hold onto even a fraction of the life she once flaunted. The friends who used to admire her extravagant spending had moved on to someone with deeper pockets. But none of that mattered to me anymore. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't angry. I was just free. Life moved on. I moved on. Weeks turned into months, and I barely thought about her anymore. I built a life that was mine, one with real friendships, real fulfillment. No more bleeding my bank account dry for someone else's entertainment. But life has a funny way of circling back. One evening, I was sitting in a cafe near my office, catching up on emails while waiting for my coffee. Just another ordinary day. And then I heard it. Her voice. I didn't look up right away, but I felt it before I saw her. That familiar tension. That forced sweetness in her tone, like she was rehearsing the conversation in her head before even speaking. When I finally looked up, there she was, standing by the counter, hesitating like she wasn't sure whether to approach. She looked different. The designer bags, the flashy jewelry, the perfectly salon-styled hair, gone. She wasn't in rags or anything, but she wasn't the woman she used to present herself as. The artificial glow of excess was missing. So was the smug confidence. She had been knocked down by reality. Slowly, she walked over. "Bae," she said, offering a weak smile, like we were old friends catching up. I nodded, but I didn't say a word. I wasn't about to make this easy for her. "I've been meaning to reach out," she said, shifting uncomfortably. I wasn't sure if you'd even want to talk. I'll let the silence hang between us." She was waiting for me to step in, to smooth things over, to give her an easy way out of the discomfort. I didn't. She sighed, shoulders dropping. "I just wanted to say, I was wrong. About everything." I tilted my head slightly, pretending to be curious. "Everything." Her lips pressed together. I treated you badly. I didn't appreciate what I had, and I see that now." I let out a short breath, not quite a laugh, just a reaction. "Took you long enough." She swallowed, her fingers tightening around the strap of her bag. "I lost everything, you know. The house, the lifestyle, the people I thought were my friends." She shook her head, almost as if she still couldn't believe it. "They turned on me so fast. I was stupid to think they actually cared." I didn't respond. What was there to say? I had known that all along. She hesitated, took a slow, deliberate breath, like she was preparing herself for something. "I miss you," she said softly. "I miss us." I let the words settle between us before answering. "There was never an US," I said. "There was you. And then there was me. The guy paying for everything while you laughed behind my back." She flinched. Maybe she thought time had softened me, that I'd be willing to rewrite history, pretend things weren't as bad as they were. I wasn't. She reached out slightly, as if to touch my hand, but I pulled away before she could. I thought maybe we could talk. Maybe start over." I shook my head. "There's nothing to start." Her eyes shimmered, the beginnings of tears threatening to spill over. Maybe they were real. Maybe they weren't. Didn't matter. She had spent years making me feel small, treating me like an accessory to her life, believing I'd always be there to clean up the mess, to fix things, to keep playing the role she had assigned me. She was wrong. I grabbed my coffee, stood up, and met her gaze one last time. "Take care of yourself," I said. And just like before, I walked away. Our story ends here. But if you've made it this far, why not subscribe? It helps us more than you know. I've also picked out 2 other videos I think you'll enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I'll be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.